Hello and welcome. I hope that you're all doing well. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the idea of sending data into a request using what are known as path variables. The general idea of a path variable is that it is data that is sent in the actual path of the URL in order to provide it to an endpoint in order for that endpoint to use that data in the processing of the actual request itself. So let's take a look at what that looks like in the actual code, and then we'll look at sending some requests. So I actually have already typed out the code for this one. It's really a simple and straightforward change. And the only real changes that you'll see is inside of this get request that we had before. What I've done is I've added this little component here, which is this :data. What this is doing is it's specifying that when you access the test URL, so you have this /test, you can provide additional data by putting a slash and then typing in something afterwards. So for instance, you might have seen in some web pages like the idea of going like test/1, right? This would be an example of a way to provide extra data. The extra data is this second piece here, which maps to this :data right here. Now, what we can do with this is we can use it in any sort of situation to provide additional information to the GET request. Let me give you an example of when this might be used. Suppose that you have a database of students and you want to get a specific student based on their student ID. So maybe they have like a specific ID associated with them. What you could do is you can have an endpoint that says /student, and then you can put /ID. That way the person can put in whatever ID they want. And then what we could do is we can send specifically that student ID and data back as a response. So that'd be an example of where we can use this sort of idea. And that's generally the idea of sending data over in general, right? So with GET requests, it's a method of being able to send data that the server can use in order to get the right data for you. When we're taking a look at things like POST requests, it would be a way of sending data to actually save into the database or save onto the server, right? So those are the ideas of this sending data. So what I've done here is I've gone ahead and done request.params in order to print out the parameters that are provided with the request. The parameter would be this piece here, the part that's provided after the data. Let me show you what that looks like using Postman. So go over to Postman. And as you can see, I have /test/data. Now we could change data to really whatever we want, right? So I can put in like, this is the value, for instance. When I send this, you can see the response that I put in was, of course, the parameter, right? And you can see that it shows data, this is the value. What's happening here is it's showing a mapping between this data parameter here and the value that was provided. The value being provided in this case is this is the value, since that's the part that's in the location of data in the path, right? And you can see that this format is kind of interesting, right? It's got these braces, and then it's got the parameter that's being set as well as the value for it. This is called JSON format. And JSON is a way of representing objects and data. So what JSON does is it organizes data in a set of basically a list of properties mapped to values. So you can see that the property is data, the value for it is this is the value. It's a way of being able to explicitly say, okay, this is the value, this is the thing that it maps to, right? You can almost think of it almost like in a tabular format where like each column in your table represents some value. That's the same sort of idea here. We have a property and then the value for that property. So like to give you another example, if we go back to the idea of students, right? If you have the first name and last name of a student, you could have the first entry being first name and then colon and then the name of the student's first name. And then you could have last name, colon, and then the last name of the student. That's the idea of the JSON data format. And you'll see this format come up in a lot of different instances. For that matter, we will actually use it for POST requests, which we'll talk about in the next video. So that will be another way that we can pass data over is actually using this JSON data format. So that's everything that I wanted to talk about in this video. This should help you understand a little bit of sending data through endpoints, specifically ones in path variables. In the next video, I'm going to introduce the idea of POST requests, and I'm going to show you how to send data through the body of a request using the JSON data format that I just described here. So that's what we'll look at in the next video.